So imagine you have like a puppet and you're a puppeteer, you want the puppet to move certain ways. You have to have strings that pull in every way you want the puppet to move, right? And so for us, we have as many groups of muscles as we have allowable joint motions, right? We have to have strings in every direction of pull. The hard part about this, guys, and it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility as it is with mine, is to make sense of all of the fast and loose verbiage that's out there. Ever since we were young, we've had people working with us and teaching with us. Not that we don't appreciate it and not that they shouldn't, but they're playing fast and loose with words all the time. And that gets into and so now everything's confusing. So the whole point of me in 310 bringing agonists, muscle groups based off of direction of pull, hip flexors, hip extensors, knee flexors, is to have consistency. It's like transcribing words that are in Greek and some are in Latin and bringing those into one uniform language that we could all make sense from. If you remember one of my first lectures, guys, we have muscles named in our body that have no consistency. Some have Latin names for animals and other things, and some have origin insertion names, and some have direction of pull names. There's no consistency. So with direction of pull, cervical flexors, who are those muscles? This, but they're pullers here, right? Left lateral pullers, who are they? This and this, but they pull here. It's translating into a language that then we can do some cool stuff with. If I know how they pull, then I can see how they're pulling, meaning concentric, eccentric, but it all comes down to pull. External force is trying to bend me to the left. I need muscles that are trying to bend me to the right. Right lateral pullers. Who are those muscles? Right sternocleidomastoid. I started right erector spinae. But if I just went to right sternum and right, that doesn't. That's Greek. It's different languages, and we're trying to make sense of it all. So when I try to teach you, hey guys, trunk flexors. Here is our trunk circle. Did I leave Ken? Here's our trunk circle. The trunk is somewhat circular. Mine's ovalish, but you still get the point. And the spine is back here. So we got more stuff in the front than we do in the back, kind of like the neck, right? And all I'm trying to show you is that the spine has a bilateral axis. And the muscles that cross in the front are trying to pull sternum to pubis. Flexion pullers if they cross in the front of the spine. And remember, that could also mean this too, right? Flexors of the trunk are going to be anterior crossing muscles. Now again, if I had Ken, I left him in my office. He needed a break. He was getting kind of tired. Ken is just laying down so that we could see his cross section of his tummy. Yours, if your laptop is propped up like this, Ken is laying down for you. But if your laptop is flat, then literally you can take your laptop, imagine it going here, and the anterior muscles pull this way, and the posterior muscles pull that way, and the muscles on the right side of the anterior, posterior pull right lateral, right shoulder to right hip, and the left ones pull here, and then we're going to have some twisters. But again, the reason we keep coming back to agonist pull is so that we can all speak the same language. We're translating it. Because right external oblique doesn't tell me it's pull. And left internal oblique doesn't tell me it's pull. But I'm going to teach you, right external oblique is a trunk flexor, right lateral trunk bender, and a left transverse trunk rotator. That tells you it's pull. We can do some things with that translation, okay? So, here's your trunk. There's your bilateral. The muscles that sit in the front are anterior, going to be our trunk flexors. Posterior crossers are going to be our extensors. right laterals, left laterals, merry-go-round time, PE, right transverse pullers, left transverse pullers. It's the exact same thing as your cervical. It's just there's obviously a lot more stuff to influence here. So there's going to be more muscles, and they're going to be bigger muscles. You know, moving your head doesn't really require a lot, especially for me. But moving your trunk, there's much more stuff here, so we got to have more muscles. Imagine this, have you ever wanted to know how specific muscles twist you? Like to me, that would be so empowering to not have to say core every time. But actually know, like when I'm doing a crunch and I'm going left shoulder to right knee, knowing exactly which muscles are doing that concentrically to make it happen, eccentric to left, pretty powerful. And some of you are going to have to know that. Again, there's going to be times where there's going to be contraindications to work certain obliques and indications to work other obliques. That's what I'm going to try to teach you. So let's start with the breakdown of the trunk circle. It's a bigger class, but very similar. In fact, your erector spinae, no change from your cervical. The concepts, you know, you have a group, you have a bunch of muscles that we're going to hurt. They do not cross the spine. It's like the spine is like the border. The right stays on the right, left stays on the left. Both of them have extension pull. Right has extension, right lateral, right transverse, just like the cervical erector. The left has extension, left lateral, left transverse pull, just like. So that's why I'm starting there, because it's the same as the cervical. They're bigger, but they pull the same. Your sternocleidomastoid, the part of when I was growing up and I'd be sick and I'd go to my mom's because I was sick and she'd cook me anything I wanted. I miss my mom. And she'd force me to watch because, you know, if you're sick, you can't watch what you want to watch. So she'd force me to watch like these soap operas. And every now and then they'd have a replacement actor or actress. And they would say, the part of Larry will be played by, and they would, you know, insert the new. The part of the sternocleidomastoid's pull will be played by the external obliques. That's just a little hint. That's just, I'm going to show you how, and I'm going to explain why. But if you already know how the obliques, how the sterno pulled, bang, bang, bang. So the right external oblique, I'm going to show you, has the same type of pull in the trunk as the sternocleidomastoids. I'm going to also show you how the opposite side internal obliques work with the opposite side external obliques. I'm going to show you how these two together are trying to spin the merry-go-round in the same direction. I'm going to show you how that works.
Can you do a quick demonstration of the right external oblique?
I will. I'm going to show you the picture. Yeah, this is just like a preview. You're good. Oh yeah, I'm not ending on this. This is just a preview of how things are going to break down. You know, it's like a court case where they have the opening statements, Your Honor and members of the jury, I'm going to prove to you how, like they haven't shown you the evidence yet, right? But they're proclaiming, and I'm going to show you. So it's like I'm in court. I'm like, I'm going to show you how these two muscles work together at recess to spin the merry-go-round the same. Now, they don't work together frontally, but they work together sagittally and they work together rotationally. That's what I'm telling you I'm going to prove to you, but I haven't done it yet. It's a great clarification. I'm glad you said something.
I was thought transverse was at the very opposite.
Transverse doesn't do anything out for motion. I'm going to explain what the transverse abdominis does. Transverse abdominis is literally how you squeeze a tube of toothpaste to make pressure go up and bottom. It's your interthecal pressure. It's literally your abdominal sphincter. very important to keep everything compressed, create interthecal pressure, but it starts on one end of the spine, wraps around, and ends on the other end of the spine. So there is no deviation. That is exactly how the Valsalva works. Yeah. So here's our circle, and then we're going to go into our muscles. So, like I always said, guys, you don't have to learn circles. Here's all you need to know in terms of muscles and function at the trunk. And then we're going to go through them. I'm going to show you the muscles statically. I'm going to talk about origin and insertion, but origin and insertion doesn't have anything to do with function. How does it cross has everything to do with function. So that's why it's in this. It's all in your power. All right, let's start off with, so you have, you ever saw Shrek? Ogres have layers. Onions have layers. So for us, our abdominal cavity has layers that go superficial to deep or deep to superficial, however you want to look at it. And it's really cool to think about this. If you have, think about a busy, like if you go to Houston, I'm from a small town, going to big cities, terrifying for me. But they have so many roads that the roads have to have multiple layers of overpasses. Like in my world, you have one overpass, but in big cities, you have an overpass over the overpass. And it's all because you have all these things crisscrossing, and obviously they don't want to collide. So what we have to think is our abdominal cavity has layers, superficial to deep, so that muscles can cross over and work with other muscles that are in different levels, different layers. Like you can have someone on the second floor working with someone on the first floor because the second floor is already taken by another muscle that might need to work with someone on the first floor. So we have these layers of superficial to deep because we have a lot of intersecting things. What I think is very beautiful is our intersections are these white, the white, they call that tendinous inscriptions, but they're inner tendon material that allows right-sided muscles to pull on something with left-sided muscles. Like, in other words, the force from one side can be transferred over to the other side with this inert tendinous inscription. Does that make sense? It's almost like if I'm pulling on the door and I'm pulling on the rope, I would represent a muscle on one side. Like I would represent a muscle on one side, and the tendinous inscription would be the rope to go to the other side to help pull on the other side. It's how right and left sides can kind of share forces with each other. In addition, go ahead. Yeah, each muscle that I'm gonna show you are independent muscles of each other. Absolutely, absolutely. It's almost kind of like rope was just a starter. Have you ever seen those like cargo nets? Or sometimes they'll have finger exercises where it's like a web. And you know, bless you, you know that web, you could pull it like this, or you could pull it like this, or you could pull it like this, or you could twist it. And it can create tension like in all three planes. That's kind of like how all that white tendinous inscription is. It's like that web that can help force transfer over to different sides. It's really kind of cool. So the most superficial layer is what we call our rectus abdominis. I'm going to go through it. I'm just introducing you. Again, I'm in court. I'm introducing you. And then layer two, so like our next level of the elevate of the building is our external obliques. Remember, those are the ones that are going to have the similar pull as the sternocleidomastoid. And then we go deeper into our internal obliques. Those actually have opposite. Again, I'm going to teach you this, but those actually have crisscross functions of the externals. And And then we go really, really deep and we get into our Valsalva muscle, our transverse abdominis, our inner thecal pressure. Like I said, if you squeeze a tube of toothpaste, that pressure is going to go up and down, right? That's what our transverse abdominis does with our other muscles, but that one specifically is to squeeze our tube of toothpaste when we need a force pressure.
We should say that, what is it? This is like.
Oh, no problem. So look at this screen. It's not your fault that projector is really bad. The internal obliques, and I'm going to show you better pictures. We're just getting started. The internal obliques have a different crisscross than the external. So look how the external obliques go on, let's say I'm looking at the left side. That's it. It's going left to right to the tendinous inscription. The internal obliques is going right to left. This isn't a drawing, but I'm going to show you how externals run like this, internals run. I'm going to show you that. And I'm going to show you the reason for it. It's really cool. But this picture is just to show you the levels, the layers, and how you can't have all those muscles occupy the same place. You have to layer them so that the traffic can flow in all the different directions that these muscles can pull in. This is another example of our layers. Layers. Another example of our layers. I think this is a better example of the crisscross. So the green would be external, and then inside, you see how the internal has a different crisscross, has a different obliquity, different angle. One more example of layers. All right, you guys. So the transverse abdominis, let's start off there. We'll start off deep. So again, the transverse abdominis doesn't function as a mover, an agonistic mover. However, in therapy, you guys are going to do a lot of transverse abdominis stuff for lumbar stabilization, because this muscle starts on one side of the vertebra. So it starts here and it goes straight around and inserts on the other side. So in other words, it encapsulates, it goes all the way around like this, like a giant middle of your body sphincter. And when it contracts, it shrinks your cavity and creates pressure. So the fact that it goes from your vertebra, your lumbar, to the other side, and so for some people that are hypermobile, you'll do lumbar stabilization or core stabilization. So I'm not saying that muscle has no use. Very important for stabilizing our spine, very important for creating rigidity when we do certain things. But it literally isn't involved in making my right hand go to the left or making my left go to the right, because it starts and ends in the same place, similar place. Like, in other words, think about it, guys. For me to, if I wanted to pull on this rib cage and twist the trunk, like say to the left, I would need to start and pull on the rib cage on one end and pull it to something on the other end. Well, the transverse start here, wrap around, and end right here. Like that'd be like saying, that would be like saying I'm on a skateboard and I'm on the skateboard and I have, oh Lord, I'm gonna die. And I pull on, I have a rope on that door and I have a rope on the other door. And I pull both of them at the same time. Am I gonna go anywhere? Like I need to be able to have one or the other. So the fact that it's pulling from like the right side of the spine and the left side of the spine, those things cancel out. And you can't independently twist. All it's trying to do is it's a gigantic sphincter muscle of your thoracic so that we could create interthecal pressure and also stabilize the spine. That's why usually those exercises don't require like a ton of movement, right? It's more trying to create interthecal pressure, or like they'll do like posterior tilts, but it's all about trying to shrink wrap and compress that transverse. Mhm. Absolutely, because it doesn't really do the movable stuff. So you're trying to create what it does do, and that's bow out. Now, the transverse abdominis, I think, no fault to it, gets a bad name because one, it has abdominis in it, and two, we know transverse plane, right? So I think the verbiage is kind of, if I could go back and rename things, if I ruled the world. So it does have like, why wouldn't it be? All I'm saying is a bicep can't do flexion and extension. True? And notice all of our muscles, right external, left external, right, left, transverse. It's one. Like it literally can't pull both ways at the same time. Whatever's trying to pull me this way is being canceled by the other part that's trying to pull me that way. And they cancel each other out so that they can shrink. Make sense? So that's why you won't see the transverse in the circles. Very important. Lumbar stabilization, interthecal pressure, but it won't allow me to twist to the right or to the left. Let's talk about one that can. Your internal obliques. So do you remember for the cervical, we had right and left, right sterno, left sterno, right, left. So your obliques, plural, you have a right and you have a left. Internal obliques. Your internal obliques have the same exact pull as the external obliques in two planes. Sagittally, in other words, they sit in the front of class. And your right external is going to have the same line of pull as the right external frontally. In other words, they're on the right side of the belly button, right ribs to right hip, pulling left ribs to left hip. Here's where this is the fun part. This is where I get paid the small bucks. Let's look at how this muscle runs from a different view. Because remember, guys, muscles pull a lot of times in 3 dimensions, but sometimes you only get a 2-dimensional picture of a 3-dimensional concept. So what I mean by that is, we should be able to easily see from this picture the frontal pulls of the internal obliques. There's my belly button, my AP axis, right's going to pull right lateral, left's going to pull left lateral. Pretty easy to see. The rotational stuff is not very easy to see from that picture, so we need to see another picture. We need to look at it differently. So let's take a look at a lateral view, an inside view. Watch this, guys. Got to visualize here. At the top, some ribs. At the bottom, some pelvis. And remember, these muscles are also pulling on that shrink wrap, on the tendinous inscriptions that help to transfer force from one side to the other. So this is what I want you to imagine. Looking at the line of pull, muscles can only pull if my left internal oblique pulls the left side of my ribs. Wouldn't that be a posterior pull that it's given to the ribs? Wouldn't that be pulling the ribs down and back? is a left transverse trunk rotator. All right, let me try another way. That didn't catch it. I think everybody can see how it's trying to hold down. This is why we did trig, because it's at an angle. And some of that angle is here, and some of that angle is here. Let's try again. Angle. Some of that pull is here. That's the lateral bending pull. And some of that pull is here. That's the left transverse trunk rotation. The left oblique works with, I'm gonna shortcut here because I think this will, I need you guys to see this before the end of the day. Any side internal oblique works with, in the transverse plane, the opposite side external. The opposite side, they pull the same way transversely. I'm going to give you a lot of examples. How many of you have ever heard of Chewbacca? On the big Chewbacca has a belt that's famous for his Chewbacca belt. Right? And he had, I don't know why he had it, but maybe that was just like what was in style on Kashyyyk. Nerd alert. I have young sons. They like that stuff. Chewbacca's belt. So Chewbacca's belt runs at an angle. If I were to attach the belt to my right shoulder and pull across, all of this pull would be left transverse. Now remember, the sternocleidomastoid, you don't have a lot of stuff up here. So all I needed was one to pull forward, and that was enough. But when you get a lot of stuff, you need a little extra help on the merry-go-round. So what I'm trying to show you is that my right external oblique that's trying to pull my right rib anteriorly works with my left internal oblique that's trying to pull my left rib posteriorly. External, internal, have the exact same line of pull. They don't literally cross the belly button, but thanks to our tendinous inscription, that rope, that webbing rope, my right external can have its force transferred across to the left internal to help pull in a direction of transverse rotation. That's super cool. Let me give you a visual. Right external oblique, kind of like the sternocleidomastoid. Some of that pull is here. That's trying to pull you right lateral. But some of that pull is here, and that's what's trying to pull you left transverse. Trigonometry. Here's our angle. This part is trying to pull you to the side. This part is trying to pull you across. And that's what obliques mean. It's just angles. Obliquity. Let's go to, because the obliques are the hardest things to see. Literally. So let's go to our PowerPoint. Let's pull up our PowerPoint and let's visually see the kind of holes for each of them. So right and left. Externals. Now this video, if you have right and left externals, those are going to be pulling in opposite transverse rotations, right? No problem. They cancel each other out. They can work work together to crunch it. Right? So that's why on these videos, you'll see right and left external oblique. That's when they're working together, canceling each other out canceling each other out frontally, canceling out each other transversely, synergistically working sagittally.
So, forward, front, would theoretically work everything together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything that's in the front. Absolutely. And again, it's beautiful because if you're just trying to go sagittal, the right frontals are going to cancel out the left frontals, and the right transverses are going to cancel out the left transverses, and they can all work together to pull the anterior. So, right lateral, so right external oblique. This established how it was a trunk flexor, right, as it sits in the front. Now let's look at it independent because the right external has two different functions than the left external in two different planes. Same function in one plane, but one sits on the left side of class and the other sits on the right side of class. So frontally, they actually have antagonistic pulls, and transversely, they have antagonistic pulls. So that first one was showing you how they work together sagittally, and then we break it up into what do they do opposite. So this would be how it pulls right ribs to right pelvis, right lateral. I love the different views. Remember, this is all about pull. How does it pull? And then right transverse. Love this. So that would actually be when it's pulling. So like, in other words, that would be like if you started here and it was pulling you back. Does that make sense? You started here. Yeah. Same thing. So for this picture, you've already started twisting. You've already twisted, so that muscle really long, pulling you back. Does everybody understand what I mean by or externals have the same line of pull as the sternos? Like that's a great note to have, because if you've got the sternos, you're going to be able to get the externals. I know we're not done yet, but I want to apply some practice. I want you to tell me. I take great pride in my students being able to answer these kind of questions. All I'm asking you is about external and internal obliques. Can you tell me which right or left external, right or left internal are being stretched? I'm going to help you through the process. You identify the position. How am I twisted? And then you know that however I'm twisted, muscles that pull that way are actually being slack, shortened, and muscles that pull the other way are being lengthened and stretched. So let's see if we could figure that out. Don't answer it right away. Give it some time. I want to know which external, and I'd like to know which internal is being stretched. There may be a time in therapy where you need to stretch a specific internal and external. Do you know how? Do twist them, do you know what position to put them in? That's what we're practicing. It's functional knowledge. It's analytical knowledge. I know you guys have been taught the rules of your sport, but we got to play. We actually have to play it so we can get better at it. The nuances of the game. It's one of my favorite analogies. Just because I know every single rule of basketball doesn't mean I can play. I can spend time memorizing every rule, how much feet, how many seconds, fouls, this, that. Doesn't mean I can ball. Best way I could getting better at basketball is to play. That's what we're doing. We're playing. How is this person's trunk rotated? To his right or to his left? Right. Okay. His sternum is looking at his right hip. That means his trunk is rotated to his right. If his trunk is rotated to his right, he's not stretching right transverse trunk rotators. He has to be stretching left transverse trunk rotators. Then the final step is, who are the left transverse trunk rotators? Whether you learned it yet, we just this. But what we can do is we can go to our functional circles and say, who are our left transverse trunk rotation pullers? Who's trying to spin the merry-go-round to the left? Right external oblique, left internal oblique. Powerful tool. We'll get to the erector in a little bit, but I want to do a couple more of these while it's fresh. While it's fresh. All I'm asking you is obliques. Isometric, he's just holding this position for the camera. But we know the cable is trying to twist his trunk, right? So you have to ask yourself, how is the cable trying to twist his trunk? Know that I don't need muscles that are pulling in the same direction. I need muscles that are pulling in the opposite direction. And then say, who are those muscles? You see how motion is motion. But by putting the muscles in the same language as the motion, that's what allows us to make sense of it all. The machine is trying to twist me here. I need muscles that are trying to twist me there. Who are those muscles that are trying to twist me there? Is that? No. Well, same thing. I want everybody to have a chance. I like that you don't ball, but I want everybody to kind of have a chance to process at their own speed. Yeah, I'm not disrespecting the erector. I just want us to get in the habit of seeing how the opposite side of the leaves work together, and then I'll introduce the erector as that other variable. Because this is something new. This is weird. Having the sternal work with another muscle in the neck you've never had. But it makes sense why. I mean, you're only moving your head here. Now you're moving darn near most of your body mass. So it makes sense. We have to have more muscles. Okay, guys. Oh, no. That not on the test, I'll make sure to, well, first of all, we've already had our circle test. I teach through repetition. I know sometimes it can be frustrating, but I think repetition helps us to better understand things. If you showed someone at a gym and said, what muscles specifically am I using to hold this position? I'm not saying none of them would know, but a majority of them would just say obliques, core, maybe transverse abdominis. And it's not their fault. They weren't taught how to translate these things into a similar language so that we can make sense of it. Bring it all back to motion, because forces influence motion. F is equal to ma. So if I can see what the external force is trying to do, external force is trying to twist his trunk to his right. Okay, that's a language, that's a word, it's in Latin, let's say. Well, what I don't want to do is use a different language for the muscles. That gets really confusing. If the motion is in Latin, I want the muscle answer to at least to start to be in Latin. External force is trying to twist me to the right, right transverse. I need muscles that are trying to twist me to the left transverse. You see what I'm saying? Now I could be, ooh, I know I need left transverse muscles because I see why I need them. And now that I have that answer, now I can retranscribe it into the language it was written in. Who are those muscles? Who are the left transverse trunk rotators? Right external, left internal. Bang. And again, we're going to get to the erector, but I just wanted to focus on how these ipsilateral obliques work together across the tendinous inscriptions. Transverse. I think the sagittal one should be easy to see. I think the frontal should be easy to see. Everybody on the right side of the belly button, hey, left side, hey. The crisscross is a little weird because even though the muscles don't cross, their effects do. Their forces do through all of that white tendinous inscription. Their force is able to transfer over through those tendons, through those common tendons. All right, applied question. From here, very similar question. From here, you observe right transverse trunk rotation. So he's holding this position, and then all of a sudden, you observe right transverse trunk rotation. Can we prove what type of contraction must have happened? Absolutely. He's here. Machine's trying to pull him to the right. I need muscles that are trying to pull me to the left. I call those left transverse trunk rotators. I identify them as right external, left internal. When I go to contraction, forget about the individual muscles because it's not in the same language. Say, okay, right external, left internal, that's great. I'm going to go back to saying you're left transverse trunk rotators for now. Because left transverse trunk rotation pullers, when they're working, allow right transverse trunk rotation, but only through bang. The problem that I see isn't with you and isn't with me. God, I sound like Dr. Seuss. It's the fact that biomechanics in general is a combination of two very different fields. The physics and the engineering, they follow rules very strictly. We don't. And it's not our fault. No one could just go practice being an engineer. You have to do engineering school. But in human movement, we have parents who coach us. We have people who train us. We have, again, it's nobody's fault, but it makes sense why we play fast and loose with a lot more terms. It makes sense why it's, no one's ever taught you, guys, contractions aren't guessed at, they're solved for. There is literally something called a work equation. And in 310, I always use work and contraction interchangeably, right? That's why. So look, final thoughts of the day. It's gonna take us a few days to go through all these. You identify your agonist. Two forks in the road. Who are those muscles? Boom, 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 boom. But then when it comes to solving the equation of contraction, these muscle names are all kinds of languages. There's nothing consistent about them. Some are named out of Latin, some are named out of origin insertion, some are named out of direction of pull. There's nothing consistent. So when it comes time to solve for contraction, bring it back to their group. Because that is in the same language. Agonist, motion, contraction. Make sense? All right, guys. Y'all have a safe weekend, please. I hope to see y'all on Monday.